Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippi, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And the wild card weekend has come and gone. There were some good games, there were some bad games, and there were some games that were less than ideal for Vikings fans. But we'll go over these and talk about them one by one. And we'll start off with the Texans and Browns. The Texans winning this one 45-14. Now, this was the game that I thought was going to be the closest, and boy, was I wrong about that. This was a game where CJ Stroud and this Texans offense took control of things from the get go. And it's clear at this point CJ Stroud is the future of the league. He is incredible. Had a rookie of the year season. If he doesn't win that award, I don't know what's going on. And he just has this poise already in the pocket. He's one of those quarterbacks where people value running quarterbacks so much, but what people don't value nearly as much is mobile quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that are not inherently running QBs, but guys that are mobile in the pocket, are able to scramble and can run if they are needed to. Those are the guys that I feel like have that ability to run, but don't get injured nearly as much because they don't get those design runs quite as often. And so I think it's going to be a very valuable player in the league. And I think that it would be a lot to ask for Stroud to, in his rookie season, carry a team all the way to the promised land, especially since now the rest of the playoffs he's going to have to spend in away games, most likely, pending some unforeseen. Well, actually, yeah, because the Bills and the Chiefs are both a seed ahead, so they would play away games throughout the entire rest of the postseason if they make it past this next round. So it's a lot to ask for him, but I truly think the way he's been playing, I think he would be able to pull it off. Going into Joe Flacco, it's just unfortunate because his age really came to the forefront in this game. Obviously, it's not just his fault. Whenever you give up 45 points to a team, even though two of those were pick sixes, that's still 30 plus points that you gave up. Well, am I doing my math right? Yeah. That's still more than 30 points that you gave up to a team. So the defense is definitely still to blame, especially considering that this Browns defense was supposed to come into this game as one of the best in the league. But going back to Joe Flacco, it just seemed like his rustiness and his inexperience in these situations in the past few years, because he did have multiple years before he retired where he was on teams that did not go far and he wasn't the starter in those situations either. So it came back to bite him, and it was a nice run while it lasted, but it's clear that Flacco came off the couch and was thrown into things and did really well for a while. But sometimes that can happen when you don't figure out a quarterback for a while because they're different and all that. But yeah, his age came back to bite him there. And then finally, it brings up the question. Everyone says defense can still win championships. My argument is I feel like defense can often still win regular season games. And if you have a good defense, you're going to be able to take down those worst teams that you play, and you are going to be able to win the games that you are projected to win. But when you're in a situation against another really good team and you are forced to put your best pieces out there and put it all on the line, I feel like defense doesn't win championships the way it used to anymore. Obviously, you need to have a certain level of defense. I still don't think that. I mean, I think very few teams, even in this day and age, could win a Super Bowl with a bottom 10 defense. But I feel like it's more, can your quarterback and your skill players outduel the other team's quarterback and skill players? And the Browns, despite having the best defense in the league all year long, that ended up not being a factor for them because their quarterback was outdueled, and that ended up being the only story of the game. So, interesting point to bring up. We'll have to see if that stands true throughout the rest of this playoffs. But yeah, Texans absolutely destroy the Browns and move on to the next round. Next up, we've got the Dolphins and the Chiefs. The Chiefs winning this one 26-7 in what was just a kind of a boring game, to be honest. And I think we kind of expected a low scoring game. The cold was definitely a factor, but you can't use that as an excuse for the Dolphins. I understand that they spent half their year in warm weather, but there's no excuse for the way they played, especially on offense. There was some really bad play calling in this game, and I hate to, I love Mike McDaniel as a person, and I do think he has the potential to be a good coach, but it just his inexperience in the postseason really was proven here, as there were some really questionable play calls. Especially, there was a play late in the game where it was a third and long. I think it was like a third and 8 or something, and they threw a screen, and it just how do you do that in that situation? And then the Dolphins at that point were down by 19 points. I think there was like 5 minutes left in the game or 4 minutes left in the game at that point, and they decided to go for it on a 4th and 10 rather than just kicking the field goal. Because I understand you want to get a better chance at going down the field and needing only a field goal if you get the onside kick later in the game. But if you kick the field goal now, you're able to improve to being 2 possessions down in a game where there's only 4 minutes left. It's going to have to come down to a onside kick anyway. So if you go for it, even if you do get the touchdown, it's still a 2 possession game. So it just made no sense why they did that. And some other questionable play calling in the game. The Mahomes cracked helmet was kind of an interesting thing that happened. I'd never seen that before. In like a cold weather game, Mahomes was hit and he ended up cracking his helmet and needing to go get a new one. So that was an interesting thing I'd never seen before. I predicted pretty much every time that Taylor would go on to the screen, and I was right about the majority of them. There was one specific one where Kelsey caught like a 20-yard pass, and I was like, and Q, and I pointed my finger. The second I pointed, it cut to her. So, I mean, I'm not as annoyed with it as other people are. Like, it's a little obnoxious as much as the camera is on her, but I mean, I think people are whining about it a little too much. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And then the last point here, Tua, well, let's just put it this way: Tua is not the most accurate quarterback Tyreek has ever had. He said that earlier on in his tenure with the Dolphins, how Tua was the most accurate QB he's ever had in his career, which is just crazy to say because it's more throwing shade on Mahomes than anything, and you're trying to throw shade on the most talented quarterback in the NFL right now, which is just stupid. But Tua struggled in this game, and obviously the quarterback's probably affected more by the cold than any player on the field. Maybe the wide receivers more because they don't get to use their hands nearly as much, and it probably gets really cold for them. But you can't just use that as an excuse. And Tua was not accurate in this game. Whenever you score 7, you know that something went wrong, and the play calling was part of it. But Tua really laid an egg in the playoffs, and it's unfortunate to see because this Dolphins team really was looking good at one point in the season, but it was clear that they had a certain rhythm, and that once that rhythm was thrown out of whack, they were in trouble. And so the second the Dolphins lost that game to the Bills in Week 18, and we knew that they were going to be forced now to play away the entire rest of the postseason. We knew if it wasn't going to be this game, if they were able to pull the upset in this game, it was only a matter of time before they were going to be thrown off and lose. So it was kind of a long time coming for the Dolphins to lose this game, unfortunately. And then we go down to the Packers and the Cowboys, and I have very mixed emotions towards the way this game turned out. The Packers winning at 48-32, and that final score did not do justice for just how one-sided this game was all the way through. It was the first 7 seed over 2 seed in the history of the NFL, which on one hand, it's very frustrating for Vikings fans because we just watched Aaron Rodgers leave and we thought finally the reign of terror is over and the Vikings and Lions would be battling it out for the division for a few years to come here. And then boom, Jordan Love goes crazy in the playoffs and shows flashes of potentially being the next Hall of Fame QB to play for the Packers, which is definitely getting a little too ahead of ourselves, but still just very frustrating to watch that unfold. On the other hand, the Cowboys just became the first 2 seed to ever lose in the wild card round. That is hilarious, and it was awesome to see. And Cowboys fans are going to say it's their year again, and This year, I really wanted to believe it, but here you go. Once again, laying an egg in the playoffs. The Packers do sometimes feel like they get the worst performance from every team they face. They get a little bit lucky in that regard, but I digress there. I've always said, and before the season started, I've always thought that all the shade that Kirk gets thrown on him is so much more accurate of a representation of Dak Prescott. And people definitely hate on Dak Prescott, and a lot of it is warranted. But I mean, to be fair, I like the guy as a person. To be clear, I am saying purely out of football. Prescott is a guy that just cannot get the job done when his back is against the wall. I mean, Prescott threw multiple interceptions in this game. I'm not saying it was his fault that they lost entirely, but you have to play better in those situations when you are facing that much adversity. And people always say, "Oh, Kirk gets into high leverage situations and just completely can't do anything." Kirk played amazing in last year's wild card round, and the defense was the reason why they lost. For this game, the defense was horrible, but also Dak did not play well. Um, the Packers thankfully get to face their kryptonite next week, which is the 49ers. I can't imagine they'll win this game, but we're just going to have to see what happens there. Rams Lions, once again, this was the game I live streamed. Thank you so much for tuning in to the live stream. And it was fun that this was really the only close game all week long, and I was able to react to it live. This was an amazing moment for Lions fans. It was amazing to watch this unfold. And I mean, I know I'm wearing the Lions, Packers, and Bears Who Cares shirt, but I really was rooting for the Lions in this game. The Rams had their moment in the sun a couple years ago, and the want or need to watch a team win a Super Bowl for the first time and live vicariously through them as a Vikings fan definitely trumped my divisional hatred for all these teams in this moment. I wanted to see the Lions get that first playoff win in a while, and I'm going to be rooting for them the entire rest of the way. If we can get a Bills Lions Super Bowl, that might just be the best possible matchup you could ever want. And so much frustration between two fan bases all coalescing together for that game would be amazing. But anyway, back to this game, the Lions got off to such a good start, and then the defense was able to do just enough at the end to keep them in it. The Lions offense in the second half was clutch, but they were not nearly as dominant in that second half as they were in the first. But they were able to score enough in the first where they were able to keep the momentum going, and it was really a tale of two halves where the offenses were going back and forth in the first half, and then the second half, it really started to slow down a little bit. The Rams' defensive line could not touch Jared Goff, especially in the first half, but even in the second half, to be able to lock down Aaron Donald the way they did in that first half was incredible. And this line's defensive or offensive line, it really is a testament to the fact that if you can get a good offensive line, the running game becomes better, and the passing game probably doubles or even triples in production. I mean, I've been saying year after year, if the Vikings got a better offensive line, imagine how much better they could be. And at this point, I feel like having a better offensive line is more valuable than getting a good running back. Truly. I think that if you can get an offensive line the way that the Lions have been playing, you can throw pretty much anyone in there and do well. But to get it to an elite level, the Lions were able to do that as well because the Lions running game would be good no matter what with this O line. But then they threw in two guys that are some of the better running backs in the league right now. That two-headed monster of Montgomery and Gibbs. I mean, the way this Lions running game has been elevated throughout this second half of the season, their resurgence in that regard makes them legitimate Super Bowl contenders. If they weren't able to run the ball that well, it would be a little bit different. But I truly believe that they can hang with anyone in the league right now, the way that this running game has completely elevated their entire offense. So that's incredible. Matthew Stafford is a true warrior. I mean, to have the injury to his ribs and to just, I mean, the fact that you saw him walk in his own power off the field and you somehow just knew he was going to come back no matter what the injury was. he can fight through pretty much anything, and he is tough as nails, so a testament to him for that. And then finally, Puka Nacua put up one of the best losing performances I think I've ever seen. I think, did he get over 200 yards? I don't know if he did, but I'm going to double check that. But I know that he got close. Yeah, Nacua, 9 receptions, 181 yards, and a touchdown. That's incredible and worth noting, regardless of what the final score was. Second to last here, we have the Steelers and the Bills. The Bills winning this game at home 31-17. And the Bills got off to such an early start. I thought that this game was over from the get-go. Then the Steelers kind of started to creep back. The Bills' offense slowed down just a little bit, but eventually they were able to pull ahead and get this victory. It's always great to see the Steelers lose. As a Vikings fan and as a Minnesota sports fan, I hate seeing teams that have won it before just keep on becoming successful. And I understand they haven't won it now since, in the last like 15, 16 years, but that's still not enough for me. A team that has 6 Super Bowls, I will not root for them no matter what, and I'm always gonna hope they don't succeed. And it helped that also the Bills were playing, because the Bills are my second favorite team. I'll always root hard for them. They deserve a Super Bowl pretty much more than any other team in this entire league. So it was great to see them get this victory. Playoff Josh Allen was on display here today. Incredible performance by him. He rushed for, trying to look at the stats here, but I mean, his passing yards honestly were not impressive. I mean, 203 yards, but he threw for 3 TDs and ran for 74 yards. I mean, it's a weird statistical performance, but he was incredible in this game. He showed why the Bills are more successful with him than without him. And there were definitely points in this season where a lot of people doubted him, and I doubted him too. I will admit that. But he showed that when the going gets tough, he just digs his feet into the dirt, and he carries this team forward. And so many other players were factors in this game. The defense played phenomenally, and the Bills wide receivers also were fantastic, but it really was Josh's show. And it shows that when he is able to find his groove and not be uncomfortable, and when he doesn't overthink things, he can be unstoppable in the playoffs. And if he can continue to play like this, I really think that the Bills could be the Super Bowl favorites right now. There were some concerning injuries for the Bills, especially on defense, so that's definitely something to monitor. Other point here, James Cook is also a real game changer. I talked about how the Lions had a resurgence at running back the last half of the season. The Bills really leaned into their running game in the second half, and the fact that they were able to lean on Cook to make those plays happen. When the Steelers cut the deficit down to only a touchdown, they handed it off to James Cook. Very first play of that next possession, he rattled off a 15-yard run. Just incredible performance by him, and really changed the trajectory of this game potentially. And then the Steelers' QB issues. I mean, when you have a performance like that from Mason Rudolph, he was not exactly put in a situation to succeed, especially the way that the defense carried them all season long and then allowed what they allowed from the Bills in the first and second quarter. But Rudolph threw an interception, 2 TDs, 229. Not the worst statistical performance, but I mean a QB rating of 41. The Steelers need better, more consistent offense. And if they can pair that with the way their defense played, especially if they can get TJ Watt back, I mean, this Steelers team could be good next year. They just need to figure out things on offense. And then finally, we'll finish things off with the Eagles 9 and Bucks 32. The Bucks dominating this game, and when I was watching the pregame, I guess I didn't really register in my mind just how much the Eagles had fallen, because I knew that they had not played well the last few weeks. I knew that they had some injuries and AJ Brown wasn't in the game. I knew that Jalen Hurts had his injury, but I was still imagining that Eagles team that beat the Chiefs early on this season. I thought that maybe this would be a stumble that would be rectified by understanding the magnitude of the moment, but this Eagles team just fell off the face of the earth, and they were not good in this game. always great to see as a Vikings fan. Hate to watch the Eagles succeed, and so glad that they were able to lose this game. And I hope that Eagles fans are upset after that loss. The Bucks won the battle of the D lines. I really thought it would come down to that, and the Bucks were the better D line in this game. Vita Vea, if people did not know who he was and did not have enough respect for him before this game, they better have it now because he was unbelievable in this game. He was able to almost single-handedly stop the tush push that would have gotten the Eagles that 2-point conversion back when the game actually was close. And he was a major factor in the Eagles' running game getting stuffed, which really proved difficult for Jalen Hurts because I think with his injury, they were really hoping to lean on the run in this game. Going into that injury, the thing is, Jalen Hurts clearly wasn't 100%. He wasn't throwing the ball nearly as well as he usually did, but it wasn't to a level where you can just blame it on that injury because the entire Eagles offense was completely off in general. They were not on time with each other. The play calling was horrible. I mean, Sirianni's job is definitely in question after the way that this season went, and this entire offense was just completely off kilter. And so you cannot blame just Jalen Hurts for that performance, and that much is clear. Then finally, Baker Mayfield, we know that he can be streaky. We know that there have been times in his career where he has really been awful, but in this game, not only did he play well, but he also showed himself as a true leader. And I always knew he was a good leader, but in this game, you saw that the Bucks wide receivers were dropping it. Evans was clearly down in the dumps after missing a couple really deep throws, including one that could have been caught for a deep touchdown. And Mayfield was there for him. He was encouraging him, patting him on the back, telling him he still trusted them, and that is the making of a great leader and a guy that can lead a team in the future. He's not necessarily the best quarterback to walk on a field right now, but that is a quality that you cannot just train and build in a player. That's something that they have inside of them. So great performance by Mayfield on and off the field. So that does it for the wild card recap. I am really excited for next week's games because now looking forward towards next week, we have some really good matchups. The Texans at the Ravens. I'm so excited to see this battle between CJ Stroud and Lamar Jackson, two teams that I definitely think are evenly matched, and this game could end up being really close in that first game at 3:30 on Saturday. And then at 7:15, the Packers and 49ers. I mean, I can't imagine that game is going to be necessarily close, but I didn't think the game against the Cowboys was going to be close either. So here we are. But still, if the 49ers can destroy the Packers, I will be a happy camper. The Bucks and Lions, definitely an interesting story for Mayfield to be facing off against the Lions, and the Lions with an opportunity to advance to their first NFC Championship game in who knows how long. And then of course Chiefs Bills at 5:30 on Sunday. I mean, I don't need to explain to you why that's going to be a good game. So, should be a lot of fun next week. I'm going to be making a preview video just like I always do. Look for that one coming out most likely on Thursday. So, looking forward to all of that. But thanks so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.